Hello, my lady. How are you today? I'm sorry, I've been doing a lot of baby talk because I have a 2-year-old, and also I just went to the Renaissance Fair to go scope out the scenes, so those two kind of combined into like a 4chan user for some reason. Hello, you dirty potters, and welcome to another episode of Glaze Review, where I take glazes off the shelf and I test them for you before they even get into your hands. In today's video, we are testing DL-42 River Moss from the new dipping and layering glaze from AMACO. We're going to be dipping all of our test styles, firing it to cone 6, and this is a food-safe glaze. AMACO has been coming out with multiple lines of glazes recently, and the one that I'm very, very pleased with, in fact, is the PCF line from AMACO. Almost all of those glazes are bangers, but this dipping and layering glaze seems to be a little bit hit and miss. The one thing it really sells you on is consistency. By buying 5 or 10 pounds of it, it's much cheaper than buying something like multiple bottles of the same glaze that are essentially the same colors. So this line of glazes is supposed to be the remedy to the studio potter who needs one basic color such as white, green, brown, black, blue, things of that nature. In today's video, we will be testing this glaze on a white porcelain clay body. We also have our redstone or brown clay test style. This is a small teacup. It is red velvet from the AMACO company, a place where I get the high majority, if not all, of my clay from. And we also have 2 other mixed testers over here. I'm not sure what we're going to do with these 2 yet, but I will rename the combos before we put them in the kiln, as we always do on this channel. Not to jump the fence here, but I have been testing this glaze over at my 9-to-5 job where I teach people pottery, and because of that, I've gotten a few pictures of test styles out before you even need to really look at the video, and the pictures come out fantastic. I just need to know if it comes out consistently, because these 2 are the only 2 that I've really tested them on, but there's a quality of this glaze that I think I can replicate in my own kiln, because the kiln and the heat work is a little bit different at my job than it is in my kiln. I fire a tiny bit differently. That being said, enough talking, let's get glazing. I'm a little bit stumped because now that we've done our base glazes, I don't really know what I'm going to do with these 2. In fact, I do know what I'm going to do with this one, now that I think about it. I'm going to do this on an experimental subject, but I have no idea what I'm going to do with this little brown cup. Ooh, I know. We can do green and black, and then the other one can be green and red. Yeah, with the crimic colors. Xmas is close enough, right? Like, we don't have to pretend anymore. In January, like, we're excited for Christmas. It's close enough to where we can actually like be excited without repercussions from people online being like, it's not just too soon. 2 kinds of people who don't like holidays in the world: people who got coal in their stocking for Xmas, and people who read about the origins of the holiday. Okay, and as we usually do, let's talk about what we're putting in the kiln before we actively put it in. All of these tests will be fired at cone 6 oxidation. There's no special holds or anything like that in my kiln load. I go straight up and then I let it drop at a natural cool. These 2 are both of our porcelain and redstone or brown clay test styles. This is technically a red velvet clay body, while this is pure porcelain. They are both from the AMACO company, where I get the high majority of my clays. This is not a shout out, I am not sponsored by them. I just get messages of people asking like, where do you get your clay from? And I get almost all of my clay from the AMACO company. Now this one here I did not glaze in front of you. This one's a little bit different. I glazed this one off camera because I was reading a comment that said, I really wish you would have shown a dipping and layering glaze layered with another dipping and layering glaze. And firstly, I would like to say it's very difficult to do that because they take up so much space. They're like 2-gallon buckets that I have to put them in, and unless I want to make them all and combine them with themselves, then I need lots more space and lots more buckets and lots more material to work with. That being said, I do happen to have about 3 of them made at once because that's the amount of materials I have at the time. So this is enamel white, which is a glaze that we already tested here on the YouTube channel. I will put it right here somewhere, and I will also post it down below in the description just in case you want to see that episode. But underneath, if you can tell, because there's a little line right there, is actually river moss, the dipping and layering glaze we're testing today. So this in fact is 2 dipping and layering glazes from AMACO. In my experience, the high majority of the time, the enamel white turns almost anything it touches white if you put it over it, so I made sure to put the river moss underneath this just to see if there's a difference. These 2 over here are the dipping and layering glaze river moss with Ron Roy's high gloss black on top of it for this brown or redstone teacup, and this one right here is a very special glaze, one I just developed, which right now is called Ancient Greymon. I did make this glaze like 2 months ago though, so it's starting to crack a little bit up here. I have to add a little bit of like water or CMC gum to it or something to fix that, but I think it should hold tight for now. Those are the tests that we're putting into our kiln, and with that being said, let's get started. Okay, now that everything's out of the kiln, let's take a look. This is River Moss DL-42 on a stoneware B mixed with grog clay body. This color, pretty good. I like this color. It gives me a surprise because River Moss essentially on the test style promises that it gives you the color green. What it doesn't tell you, and you'll see this further on in the video, is that across the board, it gives you these little iron specks in the glaze matrix as well, and I'm not sure where that's coming from, but I do know that there's a good shot of it right there. Do you see that? Do you see those little iron specks? That's not something that I saw on the test style of the bottle or the container they gave me. But I'm not displeased with this. I actually really like these little iron specks. I will say though, that the dirtier your clay body is, and I'm using the word dirty lightly, that the more you see of these. This is no more apparent than when we look at our next test tile, which is our porcelain test tile here. This came out pretty good. I'm fairly happy with the fact that this did come out green and it gave me an extra wanted surprise. Sometimes you get glazes that give you an extra surprise and you didn't want that. Like sometimes they promise green and they come out like this weird kind of greenish blue and you're like, I wanted green. I did do another one of these though. I did do a porcelain one that was mixed and they didn't do so well, but there was a bit of a run. This almost tried to turn ancient coppery right there, right on the rim, which is where I put it. I just put it right here and I let the rest of it keep this river moss. And it tried something, but it seems to be a runner if you don't put enough water in the glaze. We'll talk about these 2 later because there is something that I want to talk about, and this is my fault. Before we get any further, I want to say these 2 did run, but this is 100% my fault. It is nothing to say about the glaze. The glaze itself, in fact, if you use it properly, like I did the first time, is very, very, very stable. And it still gives you this beautiful green color we've been talking about the entire time. But we do need to talk about mixing your own glazes from a company and the amount of water you use, because if you don't use enough water, things happen. Let's take a look at our other combination, which was enamel white, the other dipping and layering glaze from AMACO, and this river moss dipping and layering -42 from AMACO. So here's the thing that I'm slowly learning about these DL glazes from AMACO. They are strong. This is something that I've actively never seen before in my entire glaze career. The dipping and layering AMACO enamel glaze, enamel white, that we reviewed before in this episode, I knew was strong. No matter what you do, unless you put it on a red clay body, it essentially comes out enamel white. And even when you put it on a redder clay body or a red stone or some type of iron-bearing clay body, it usually turns some type of super strong gray. And I knew it was strong because I've done about 4 tests with it, and within those 4 tests, the white almost always overpowered any other colored glaze. Although, this is from the same line, right here, the river moss that we're testing today. So this is also a dipping and layering glaze. And for some reason, the white did not want to compromise with the green, and the green did not want to meld in with the white, so the green just ran over the white. If you feel right here, which I know you're watching so you can't, this is 2 separate glazes. These glazes are not forming into another version of each other, and that's very strange to me. Usually if one glaze overpowers another, you just kind of see that glaze more so than the other. But no, there in fact is a layer of white, enamel white, underneath this entire thing. And you can kind of see where it stops right about here. The green just rolled right over it. These 2 are very, very strong glazes. Now let's talk about our red clay test tiles, which I am the most happy with. Remember when I showed you those little specks in the other ones, in the stoneware clay body and in the porcelain clay body? Well, it turns out, if you get something that has iron in it, or at least an iron-bearing clay body, this drastically exaggerates it. And I mean, it barely turns green anymore. This entire thing is essentially just iron, 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 iron. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate it. I, in fact, like it a lot. It looks very rustic, very runic. This would look fantastic on a piece with something over it that was meant to look like this. But as far as just a regular green glaze, I had no idea that it would do this. You could see all this iron just cascading down. And I heavily assume, that's just because this is an iron clay body. I freaked out when this first happened, so I did an entirely new kiln load and fired a second one. And the second one came out the exact same way. This is our consistency test for our redstone clay body. And this one is actually fired at cone 5, while this one is fired at cone 6, which is strange to me, because this one got, virtually no green at all. This entire thing turned dark. I do, however, want to take a quick sidebar and talk about these powdered glazes that are being mixed at home, because AMACO is selling them in the powdered form. This is the bucket that I have left over from the glaze test. And you can see there's a large layer of water on top. And if you look at the bucket itself, you can see that there's a large layer on top and all the minerals are on the bottom. This is primarily what glaze is for anyone who doesn't know. It's essentially minerals floating in water, and then we use certain minerals to make the color. Here's the thing though. If you mix these glazes, make sure you follow the instructions and put the exact amount of water that they say in this bucket. I thought I was a smarty pants, and I thought, oh, I'll just take some water out. I don't really need that much water. I want my glaze a little bit thicker. If you make the glaze thicker, you actively get a heavier application of the glaze every time you dip. You're essentially getting more mineral versus water in the glaze. And if you do that, they might run. And I just want to put this out there. I followed the rules to a T on this one. My first glaze test, I made sure the amount of water that ought to be in the glaze per the instructions were in there. But this one over here and this one over here, I did not follow the instructions, and they definitely ran. So this is a warning to all of you. Follow the instructions with these dipping and layering glazes. These things are strong. Well, thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today for the glaze review of the DL-42 Glaze River Moss from AMACO. AMACO, I want to give you a big shout out for sending this to me. I actively love this glaze. A lot of the work that I do at anime conventions is me taking cups and making kind of a silk screen and putting the color green on like earthbender cups and things of that nature. So I'm always looking for a really good standard green. I'm probably not going to use this one because, as we've learned, it seems like if you put them on any type of iron-bearing clay, which is what I like to use for a lot of my teacups, they turn into this type of metal green. For those of you using white clays or even a stoneware white clay, like anything with grog in it, I think you'll be safe. I think you'll be okay. In fact, I really enjoy these little specks that I'm getting in the glaze matrix. But if you're using an iron bearing clay, like I did with this test over here, it's going to turn a drastically different color. But thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today. Hopefully you found this review helpful. Remember to follow the instructions when making these dipping and layering glazes, regardless of whether they're from AMACO or from another company, because I like to use less water in my glazes, but for the efficacy of the videos, I generally do one good one and then another standard one, a white and a brown one, and a couple combinations, just so that we can kind of get stuff under our belt and some information. And I messed around, and I found out, that's for sure.
Thank you for your patronage.